All right. And I would invite everyone to please stand for the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Janet, do you have the roll call? Under board announcements, I would like to welcome our new commissioner, Valerie England from San Juan Bautista. Okay, and then department announcements.
Yes, thank you very much. There are 4 items this evening, and I just would like to announce that we did receive a letter of resignation from Commissioner Jean Zlotkin. And if we could for a moment just acknowledge her years of service to the county of San Benito and offer our thanks for her service.
Definitely.
Is there anything that the commissioners cared to share or anything with that?
Well, I'd just like to say that we were very blessed to have Jean with us for, even though it was just a short period of time, but she certainly brought knowledge, and I know she was enthusiastic about going down and starting some new roads and looking at new ordinances, especially I know that affordable housing was really important to her, so we'll just move forward and hopefully things will change and she can start coming to meetings, and I'm sure Valerie will carry on and do just as great a job.
Okay. Well, great. And with that, let's segue to our next item, which is the introduction of Commissioner Valerie Egland. And welcome. And I believe we'll have a swearing-in ceremony and then welcome you to share. You did? Wow. I'm sorry. I thought I must have blanked. Commissioner Egland, is there anything you'd like to say as an introduction to the community?
I very much appreciate the opportunity. I know my colleagues are excellent governors of the country here, so to speak, overlooking and watching for things, and I've watched the staff and commissioners work over the last several years, being just terribly interested myself, and so I appreciate it that Mr. Botello has allowed me the position.
Well, thank you very much, and we're glad to have you aboard.
And Valerie, I think you've made as many Planning Commission meetings as the rest of us, so you're ready to hit the ground, I'm sure.
She's also done many years in Parks Commission, so she comes from us, from Parks Commission, and it's their loss and our gain.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, with that comes our third item, which is some yearly housekeeping business we do, which is the rotation of the chair and vice chair. And in my little staff report, one-page memo there, I was a little presumptuous, and I just do want to remind the chair and others that it's a participatory vote and recommendation of the board, of the commission here on the rotation of the chair and the vice chair position. So, Chairman Lowe.
Thank you. This is my very favorite part of the agenda. I would like to open up nominations for a new chair of the Planning Commission.
I nominate Mark.
I second. All those in favor of Mark Cognazzini being the new chair of the board, or the commission, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So ordered. And I'll move on and just do the vice chair, and then I will vacate this seat. I will open up nominations for vice chair of the San Benito County Planning Commission.
Robert Rodriguez.
Okay.
I second it.
Okay, it's been moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So ordered. Okay, Mark.
This is it.
This is where we play musical chairs. We got to move a few names too.
I do have to say with Commissioner Rodriguez's absence tonight that it reminds me of an adage of don't miss a meeting, you might get a lot to do.
Exactly.
Okay, so the next is number 4, the confirmation of meeting calendar for 18. We have they have the layout here. Everybody has it? Through December.
The only one I had concerns about was whether the December 19th, which is the regular third Wednesday of December, if that's a realistic date for the commission, just considering holidays and things like that. But if you should decide to want to move it or entertain another date, we'd have to really do some configurations to see who might have the board chambers the evening for the new day that you go to. So, but this follows the regular pattern of county meeting schedules, and it's not a diversion from that. Not divergent from that.
Okay, Mr. Chair, if there's no further conversation, I'll move approval of the calendar for,
Including the December 19th, and if we need to change it, we'll change
we'll
it
change it, yes.
later on. Okay, got a motion?
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Okay. Public comment. Planning Commission welcomes you to the meeting and encourages your participation. So anybody would like to speak to an item not on the agenda, you may do so now. And please complete a speaker card. Is there anybody that has a comment under the public comment period? No. Okay. So, consent agenda. Got approval? Okay, acknowledgement of public hearing. Do we need to move on that or just? Okay. An acknowledgement of the posting, so that's done. All right, regular agenda, public hearing, tentative map, modification TSM number 15-93. Staff report?
Yes. Thank you. This will be more of an oral report as I've have my few slides elsewhere, but I do have a key slide that I can show for the change. So this is a modification to an approved map that the Planning Commission approved in November 15, 2017. The modification today involves the provision of a secondary full road access and its location on the subdivision. And also there's a request that the applicant may wish to speak to regarding a request to address one of the mitigation measures, but staff has also spoken to that in the staff report. So I don't have a live mic here. Excuse me if I walked across the room. No, that's live over there. Let's go.
Stationary.
Oh, I don't need a booster seat anymore. I'm a grown man. Okay, that's good. I'm going to use this one.
You can use that one?
Mm-hmm. Hard to see. Okay, so since the item was so fresh with the November approval, I was hoping and believing that the Planning Commission would really remember much of the discussion and the findings that were made. And so staff did attach the notice of decision and the conditions and the findings and evidence that were included with your November approval. And notably was condition number 12, which addressed the applicant's need to provide a full secondary access to meet county code. There was great discussion about that. And so the exhibit before you, and also in the staff report on the left, shows how the original second access had teed up across the street with the properties to the west that are not yet developed, but they have been approved with the subdivision map. We call it the Sunnyside Estates, or also the Brigantino subdivision. And that's where the applicant's cross street had been proposed or brought forward. Now, that also brought some difficulties for the applicant, because that reach, just to get that much far north and then to make the cross street, involved speaking with other neighbors and coming to an agreement on what would be improved and what those expenses were. And unfortunately, the applicant was not able to come to an agreement or something that he felt reasonable as far as expense and being able to provide that. So actually, it was the lead-up right to the meeting where some of these concerns, the meeting in November, that the applicant brought these concerns to the county, but yet didn't really dwell on it too much at the November meeting. I think there was probably such an anticipation of finally getting to hearing and getting a decision and walking away with some kind of approval that the approval was made with the design on the left. But soon thereafter, the applicant decided to propose an access that I guess he had tried on earlier drafts as he was developing the project over the years, but brought this proposal forward where he would still provide full secondary access, but it would be within property within his control, or at least his option with the seller of the land. And so that's what's before you now. And not only did the applicant bring a proposed revised map on the right, as you see, but he supported that with a traffic report prepared by an engineer working for him, a traffic engineer. So county staff received the revised map, the traffic report, which analyzed the change in the intersection location. And then county staff took that and sent the traffic report and the map to another consulting engineer as a peer review, something that would represent the county's independent analysis of this change. So the applicant submitted their report and a map change. We separately analyzed that report. And actually, both traffic consultants concluded, so the applicant's consultant and the county's consultant, that really with the 500-foot offset south, that there really would be no significant, let's use the word, environmental impact to turning movements or safety movements by moving that. And one might just, as you drive, we're all experts in driving and traffic, right? Because we do it every day. Had that offset been proposed too close to the intersection, not right on, but just too close, you might find that, cars are coming out and it would be awkward. You don't know who's going to come. But with that distance of at least 500 feet, and that's also 500 feet off the Southern Hospital Road access as well, both traffic consultants concluded that the safety and the visibility of seeing car movements, I think the term is called sight distance, would be still safe. And also with the modified map, just to reiterate that, he started with, is it 84 lots? It's 84? With 84 lots on the configuration to the left, and it's still 84 lots with the configuration on the right. So no additional homes that have additional car trips or additional volumes. And so that's the proposal. And so as county staff, reviewing this myself, and I'm not a traffic engineer, but yet the proposal is supported by two engineers, I can see where in our design code, our roadway design analysis, that the more ideal configuration would be as the Planning Commission approved it in November, where you've got a nice teed-up intersection and no new road cross traffic until you're 1,000 feet south there where Hospital Road comes in. But yet the county engineer has the authority to approve modifications to those standards, especially if they've vetted the safety, the public safety aspects of that. And so that's been supported by 1 and 2 engineers. And as an extension of the county engineer, our peer review traffic company, thought it was supportable. So with that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission consider this, and that the county engineer still believes it would be a safe configuration. And it's only a slight modification to the proposal, not changing the intensity or the level of use. There's not any new water use or sewer use or anything like that, just a few reworked parcels to still come out with 84 units. So attached to your staff report is the first of many here, but the Planning Commission resolution. So it's also representing a change from a practice we've had called notices of decision, which ends up being an acronym that gets confused with a lot of our CEQA work, which is also an NOD. But Planning Commission resolutions are pretty standard fare for planning commissions, both at cities and county levels, and this would be 2018-01. And what it does, it would memorialize some recitals of the application and when it was approved, when it was, in this case, when it was approved and when it was submitted, what the applicant's asking for, that peer reviews took into account the new changes, and that it's suggested, it's a draft, not until we've acted on it is it the resolution, but that the same CEQA findings are supported. And so that means that the initial study mitigated negative declaration that was prepared for the project that went before you in November still stands as valid in planning's recommendation and can be used for this. And also the subdivision findings themselves, a good one, eight of those findings. And then we've reiterated the conditions of approval with a modification to condition number 12, because the old condition number 12 had a graphic, and it's inserted boldly right on, I think, your page 2 or page 1 even of your staff report of what the previous configuration was and how the applicant had to work with the other property owners.
The blue and yellow. The blue and yellow.
Yeah, the blue and yellow. So that's the image that was in the first resolution. And the second resolution, which is your exhibit, believe it or not, I, went all the way to exhibit I, includes a new graphic, and also just a few line ends and strikeouts just to clarify that, should you approve this tonight, that you're approving the configuration on the right side of the screen and not the one on the left. And that concludes my presentation, and I'll take questions.
Okay. And I have a question through the chair. My question is, the cul-de-sac area up above, it doesn't come exactly to the property line? If we were going to punch that through ahead of time, down a little bit, right?
Right.
There's a little space between the cul-de-sac and the property line. I just want to make sure the county owns that space too, so if we decide at a later date, we could punch through with another roadway to hook in if we choose to do that.
I think you're on the hunt there, but just a little different. We can have the applicant speak to it. What I believe he's done, and he can speak to it, is really keep that option open should that be pursued by the neighboring property owners in the future with a future development. So notably, the property owner, it's actually the same that he has the option on, but the property owner to the east really desires to have a pathway to south side, and that had been the yellow in your previous report.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, that yellow area is not proposed for development or any activity by this applicant.
Understood.
But with that cul-de-sac option right there, that would, it looks to me that could be configurable for a punch through should a new east-west access be proposed there.
Correct. Yeah. I just want to make sure that we actually definitely have that.
Well,
If we're going to approve, then we don't have to worry about it. Don't have to come back later and decide if
Well, I might ask for a little assistance from council, because the word, using the word right-of-way really denotes county responsibility and a county road and things like that. And, we may have public roads right here, but to grab that from private property before we're using it, and we've got all the conventions for who's going to maintain it.
Well, I'm not sure, I can't tell from the map, it doesn't look like the cul-de-sac goes all the way up to that area.
No, but it's darn close, so it wouldn't be hard to do.
I know, but if we wanted it to go all the way up, then shouldn't it touch that other line straight out?
I
so that it
believe
would go-
are we talking just a few feet?
Like, shouldn't we have shouldn't,
See the map?
yeah, it doesn't look like it actually touches, so who would be owning,
Who would own
actually
that?
don't have a right-of-way for that other portion?
Well, the way I'm looking at it right now, it's the same portion of this parcel which is not developable at this time. Right here. And wraps around. I think that'd be great for our applicant, Mr. Deutscher, to speak
Yeah.
to.
To see whether that cul-de-sac could be a bit larger. Okay.
So if there are questions about the resolution, the way it's been drafted, or any of the staff analysis, I did point out how we have the county standards, but we also have the county engineer with the discretion to make a recommendation for changes. That's how we also addressed Southside Road, if you remember, recently. And until such time as we change the designation on the map for Southside Road, the county engineer's recommendation can carry the day with your blessing. So with that, I have nothing further to add, but I do believe that applicant would like to speak to the matter.
And if with the chair's permission, if Mr. Deutscher could also approach whether that could be a condition of approval that a right-of-way be recorded. Maybe he could address that issue.
This resolution, did you mention that it's going to be on all items approved from now on?
By the planning
You're
commission?
proposing.
Yes, sir.
Did you mention that?
I think I did.
Okay.
I hope so. If I didn't, I'd like to say yes.
I know you addressed it.
We're not going to have a resolution for your consent calendar. The minutes and just replaying the tape are sufficient for those actions. But when you're making a discretionary evaluation that requires findings and evidence, and you're applying conditions, that's prime for a resolution.
Okay. Any more commissioner questions? Staff?
Yeah, I had, when looking at your plot plan here, the South Side Road, you've got, so it says here, half of 80-foot right-of-way along the whole property frontage on South Side Road. And looking at your street configuration here, South Side Road, there's like an area that's called public. Is that it? Dedication by others. So I'm just wondering, when it comes to Southside Road itself, and here you've got your development, the existing road, is it going to be larger than it is right now? Is 84 feet larger or the same size as it is right now?
There's the physical pavement and the lines that you see in the ground. And then there's also the width of the right-of-way for what could be developed eventually. Okay, so right now, in the short order of things, I'm not expecting too much changes, although the applicant here will be obligated for their side of the road to put in the curb, gutter, or whatever the drainage and types of improvements called upon by the Public Works Department as we review an infrastructure, an improvement plan for developing the infrastructure.
Well, there have been the reason why I ask is not only am I concerned about the bicycle pedestrian issues on a wide enough road, which I've brought up before, but as we see on Fairview Road, there's so many problems now where county developments are not really coordinated with, or you've got development, it's clean on one side and a mess on the other side. And how we reconcile that type of thing as we move forward.
Right, like telephone poles in the way and things like that.
And way for people to walk.
Mhm.
There are issues of just connectivity and safe space.
Yeah. Mr. Deutscher, did you want to take that one on when you make your presentation on the degree of improvements expected to go in?
Sure. Best they can by road, yeah.
By road, okay, good, because I do have plans laid out here, but I do not, Commissioner Eglin, I did not see anything as egregious as 12-foot water pipes going into the road, or where the sidewalk stops and someone's having to get into traffic or anything like that. I think this is, right now it's in front of the orchard, and the applicant, I think, has every opportunity here to build it to standards agreeable to the county engineer, and also pulling from the general plan and those things. So pathways, places to walk. I'd have to revisit that. I do have the plans in front of us, though.
Appreciate it.
But any improvement plans that we get, so this is can we build a subdivision in this design plan, and then we get down to, one of the conditions of approval is you prepare improvement plans that meet all these standards, of which we're looking. That's when we've really got our magnifying glass out on the plan, and we're out in the field, making sure that we're navigating the warts and bumps and things that we might find along the way, such as things sticking in the road. But also, it's one of those things where the applicant would probably have a pretty good heads up if he says, oh my gosh, the expense of moving a power line at this point is so expensive that, should I change my plan, or how do I prepare to pay for that? But I don't think we have those elements with this project. Thank you.
Also, to answer the Commissioner's question, too, because you mentioned the inconsistencies of Fairview, government doesn't pay for roadways. Developers pay for roadways, and we can only ask for the frontage road. So,
Sure.
Cielo Vista, so that's all new on one side of the road, but the other side of the road hasn't been developed yet. So you have a nice real one side. You go by Ward Homes, which hasn't been developed yet, and you get over by down towards the church, which has, and on again one side of the road, it gets developed nicely, and around Sunny Slope Village, then it goes back into county again, and no improvements. You get back down to the 2-lane. So development and roadways are consistent with development growth and plans as they go.
Sure.
I think you asked that question, and I hope that answers it. But that's part of the overall problem with this situation, too.
Right. I have witnessed that conversation. Thank you.
I just remember the old days before Proposition 13 and before I was even a planner, though, because the communities would lay out infrastructure, including water and sewer, in the hopes of encouraging development. And that all changed with tax initiatives and things like that, putting the burden on the private applicant who would benefit first to build things to public standards.
Okay, thank you. The applicant elected. Some comments?
Good evening, I'm Todd Deutscher, the applicant. Thank you for hearing this. I guess in the reverse order, and I'm doing this by memory, but the road width for Southside Road is designated to be 84 feet with basically a dedication from Brigantino on the west side and our project on the east side of 12 feet to provide a grand width of 84 feet so the existing 60-foot width. In addition, the discussions were as they pertain to pedestrian or bicycle access on the road. That's taken into consideration, whatever the improvement plans are. My recollection, and I apologize for not knowing more specifically at this time, was discussion of a bike path going up on on south side, but I would have to confirm that. But the discussions about that have happened, and there's been no opposition on the applicant side to any provision for pedestrian or bicycle type improvements there. But I would have to look at the improvement plans, which actually won't be submitted until about the 6th of March, to tell you more specifically, but I'm happy to follow up with a note to the commission about that.
Thank you.
Sure. With regard to the other concern about the cul-de-sac, it was designed by the civil engineers with the intent to provide eventual connection to future development to the north, should that development arise. So whether the court itself is technically abutting the property line of the trapezoidal shape above the cul-de-sac, I don't know that is as important as that I think when we dedicate the streets, the easement and dedication will allow it to go right up to the property line, because this, I mean, while it's not feasible at this point to do what we had originally proposed on the left side, someday it may be justified, and the county will have the ability to connect through. So there's no intent for that to be the end of the road, no pun intended, there. So it's intended so that it can connect through, and we can condition it or whatever, put it whatever word to make sure that whatever dedication includes that teeny little bit of land above the actual pavement there, so that it can continue through.
Through the chair. I'm looking at the figure 6.3 of the general plan map on circulation, bicycle lanes. It looks like there's supposed to be an existing Class 2 bike lane on right in front of your project. So I assume that will continue on as part of the overall circulation plan.
When you say in front of the project, you mean on south side?
Well, yeah, along south side.
Yeah.
In front of you and past you.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Actually goes up to Union. And then a proposed one along Union to go east and west.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
If there are there any other questions from commissioners with regard to the item for the applicant? Because I do have one thing I would like to request if I've done answered your questions.
I think the main idea is to figure your kid lives there, and that there's schools and parks along the way, and you want them to, I think that's the main thing, is for every developer to keep in mind that our kids live here and your kids live here.
Not only it's both a consideration of conscience, but it's also a commercial consideration, because nobody's going to want to buy a house where they don't have a way for their children to have, or recreational users to get out of there too. So I think it's covered both ways, and it is provided for, as Commissioner Pierce just indicated. Sure. I provided to the clerk prior to the meeting a request for 2 minor modifications to the conditions of approval. The first of which is condition of approval number 7, which called for a homeowners association for the project. Originally, when this project was submitted, we were told by staff that there were no longer CSAs, so we would need to provide a homeowners association to cover the cost of maintenance of streets and things that would otherwise be covered by a CSA or a CFD. I am happy to report that County Council is moving swiftly with getting a CFD arranged for this whole area, which would cover the items that were to be provided for by the Homeowners Association. And so I ask that the condition of approval number 7 be modified slightly, so as to say, adding the words, to the extent required to maintain subdivision improvements not covered by the CFD, as opposed to just simply requiring an HOA. In other words, if the CFD, which it does as proposed, covers all of those things that would otherwise be covered during in a homeowner association, it really makes no sense to have an HOA that really doesn't do anything and just becomes a legal and whatever bit of cumbersomeness. So I ask that you please do that, knowing that we will have an HOA in the event that the CFD fails, or if the CFD does not cover 100% of those things that would otherwise be covered. My second minor modification request is to condition of approval number 46, mitigation measure Bio 1. H.T. Harvey was the biological consultant who analyzed the project as part of the mitigated negative declaration in an initial study, and their report came out, and the report came out and had made the note that grading not occurred during the wet season because of tiger salamander, but it was inconsistent with the report itself that basically said that really was no tiger salamander issue there. The H.T. Harvey subsequently reissued the report, adding the words, if feasible, to the grading during wet season limitation, and I'm simply asking that the words if feasible be added to that condition. As you can see in the very last paragraph. There is some concern that it might have a CEQA impact, and if you have a CEQA concern over it, I would ask that you ask County Council for her to weigh in on it, because it's been evaluated, as I understand it, by our council, County Council, and counties outside council as to not being significant or having an impact. So I thank you for your consideration. If you have any other questions? Yes?
A real quick one through the chair. I was out there, your project is already completely graded or dissed, right? Or do you have some trees?
There are some dead
trees don't count. Kind of
there's some orchards.
It's not graded, but you're kind of dissed in, right?
And part of it, there's still two old structures. It's kind of a
Hodgepodge.
Hodgepodge. There's a part of the old dead fowl orchard, and then there's just a bunch of dissed area, and then there's a couple of structures and some junk out there.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
I'm sorry, was that a clarification that it's just kind of normal activities with the maintenance of the property and it's not site preparation for your map?
Yeah.
Is that
There's been no grading, construction.
That's not what I was asking. Okay. That's okay.
That's what I wanted to know.
I just wanted to have an identification.
Sure.
Yeah. Parcel identification is all I was looking for.
Okay, open it up for public comment. Would you like to speak to it? No comments? Okay, move on. What do you want to do?
Very good. Clarification of staff, so on 47, you're in agreement? And
I'm not in disagreement necessarily, but I'd like to probably offer a little language to supplement the if feasible. The irony here is we might be in drought again, right? And we've got a report that says no salamanders. But I'd like to, even though the county would be issuing a grading permit, I'd really like this to be explicit that it would be the RMA director's authority of determining feasible at that time.
Right.
So if we add the language of feasible, we say as determined by the RMA director, which may allow everything he needs, but that rests the discretion with the RMA, if you would.
Okay. And the CSD, do we have an actual CSD? Is this number 9 or?
The CFD, the CFD is in progress. It hasn't been formed yet. So originally, when I was looking at that issue, I was wondering whether or not it could be addressed under the current language, which indicates that it could be an alternative could be approved by the Board of Supervisors at the time of approval of the final map. So I don't know that we actually have to have a language change in that section, because the board could excuse the HOA at the time of approval of the final map. But if, I'm not sure that we have an opposition to indicating that the HOA be formed to provide services not provided by the CFD.
Yeah.
This language actually tracks the language of the current county code, though, because the code hasn't been updated yet to indicate that we're forming CFDs in the future instead of having it provided by HOAs.
So would it be prudent and cautious to change the language instead of waiting to tell the final map?
I don't, do you?
You know, I'm comfortable with the language because I think reasonable minds will prevail that we're not going to have duplicitous responsibilities that how would the HOA even govern on something that's going to be, you know, a broader CFD? But I think this has us covered both ways. And
And-
Council, did I see that you had a couple little bit of language in there?
Yeah, actually, if Mr. Deutscher, perhaps another way to address it would not be to defer it to the final map stage. It says it could be, the request could be brought before the Board of Supervisors, approved prior to or during approval of the final map. If we expect to get that CFD to the board in the next several months, this could also be brought to the board at the same time that the CFD is formed to, you know, change that condition of approval to indicate that the services that are going to be provided by the CFD do not need to be provided by the homeowners. Maybe that would be part of the policy that they adopt at that time.
Okay.
I missed my turn. Could I say something?
Yeah,
Through the chair.
I just wanted to say real quickly, pardon me?
Your name?
My name's Tim Johns.
Okay.
I live in Ridgemark, which is an HOA, and I understand what the gentleman's doing here, which is fine. I don't understand all of it, but I'm going to encourage the board to require an HOA from the standpoint that the HOAs have the ability to deal with excessive automobiles and other issues that typically can't be dealt with through the city or the county. So when you go around to a lot of the developments that are around, you start seeing boats slid down the side of houses, 10 cars in the street, on and on and on. An HOA can legally deal with that. The city and the county can't. So just in terms of controlling the number of automobiles in the neighborhood, having an HOA gives the people the ability to do that without constantly having to call the county and asking you to do something.
Through the chair, you can stay up there. Looks like this is a real estate
I'm sorry.
educational program. So HOAs, depending on whether or not they're written correctly and have enforcement and a lot of other things, can do what you're saying.
Based on what...
I'm not done. We'll trade turns, okay?
Okay.
The other thing, too, is depending on the streets that he has and whether they're county streets or whether they're private roadways, Ridgemark's private roadways, you have control of your roadways.
Right.
Otherwise, if he's a county roadway and he's dedicating the roads to the county, the HOA doesn't have control over the streets because the county owns them.
Okay.
Now, HOA Ridgemark owns private roadways, but the rest of the county owns it, and so they have no jurisdiction for control of speed or anything else.
Okay.
They're only a suggestion, okay? Historically, HOAs are real problematic, okay? So I would never, and that's the only reason I'm countering you here, I would never encourage HOAs anywhere, okay? That's just because I've got a lot of minutia background with this stuff. So I understand where you're coming from, and I agree with what the end result is. I just don't agree with the way you're going. You're going to it, okay? And so so that's my part. Your turn.
Okay. Part of where I come from is before I came to this county, I lived in Palo Alto. 3 houses down from my parents was a gentleman that I grew up with. 9 automobiles in the front yard. 1 house. All kinds of signs, all kinds of everything else. My father fought it for years before he passed away. And when I lived there, I fought it with the city. There was nothing the city could do. No, they had the fire department out there, that had health out there, they had city out there. I went to the CHP when I was fighting it to see if the CHP could go in and do something about it. They had every agency they could get at this house, and they couldn't do anything about it.
Agreed.
And that's why
Some cases.
I just say moving here to down here into an HOA, when I sit down and research and read about HOAs, the HOAs do have a legal right and recourse to control the automobiles, the size of the automobiles, and the parking and everything else within the HOA. Now, I don't know about the streets issue as you presented it, because everything I've read has not discussed a county-owned street within an HOA versus a private-owned street in an HOA. It's the HOA and the control that the HOA is entitled to no large commercial vehicles, no boats, no on and on and on. So after, living in Palo Alto and seeing some of these pockets of houses that the city literally could not deal with, and having tried to deal with the city council and with the police department and everybody else that was there, and everybody's just going, we can't do anything about this. We require that he park on concrete. He's got his 10 cars packed all on his driveway, if you will, so they couldn't touch it. After coming down and doing the research and everything else on the HOA, I have a tendency to say that, they're a good thing from the standpoint that they can control automobiles and the number of automobiles based on the way that it's written. Yes, it all depends upon how it's written and whether or not the HOA itself will enforce the rules. So it really does come down with
And whether the written HOA restrictions have teeth enough to allow, and that's the problem. The problem is they say you can't do that, but you do not have an enforcement branch, you do not have jurisdictional control to tell other people what to do. Truly, it ends up being a court action. You and I can have a side conversation on this anytime and take a couple hours, but I don't want to take any more of the commission's time. But thank you for your thoughts on it. Be happy to talk to you sometime about it.
Thank you.
More comments? I got a question, Davin. In this extent feasible and extent required, who determines extent?
Are you speaking to the bio mitigation one?
Well, whenever it's said that way, who makes the decision of what the extent is? First one under number 7 is, extent required, and then extent feasible down under the number 46.
They may seem like soft, undefined words, but the general practice from planning is that you back up your decisions or your recommendations with facts and study, and like the rainy season. At one point, many jurisdictions say that they can. Right now, it's October 15th to April 15th.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it might be by the very end of March that you've got a long-range forecast from NOAA that says it's still not going to rain during this period. It makes no sense to keep people from grading if they're ready to go, and they can kind of call the end of the season at the discretion of the director. But that decision, that is it feasible to do, was backed up by the National Weather Service, your own thumb in the air. It's pretty dry out here. There's no lizards or salamanders crawling around. Please go ahead. So it may seem like soft words, but the general practice is that you do your homework and you show your math, so that when you ask me, how is it that you made that decision?
Determine that extent.
That I've got some data for you.
Yeah. Okay. Any more comments from the commission? No. You want to make a motion?
Okay, it's time for you to earn your pay.
Okay. I move approval of resolution number 2018-01.
Well, that's simple.
Could you reaffirm?
Do you need more than that?
Did you want to address the street easement to the north property boundary that as a condition of approval? Would you like me to read the language that you prepared?
No, that's fine. Go ahead and read it then.
The street easement shall be dedicated through to the north property boundary and shall be recorded on the property deed in a form approved by the county.
And reaffirming CEQA?
And the CEQA one too?
Actually,
Or you
it's
want to wrap it
interest-
up into one?
the way the motion was made and the way that the resolution is packaged, it has all that in there. It has all the findings and evidence, and it has all the conditions of approval. Right here was the suggested language that came out of your discussion on just a little more assurance that that road has the ability and, if feasible, the responsibility to connect to the north. And so county council read language like that. So she basically, should the maker of the motion wish to include the adjustment to the language in number, what was it?
For the mitigation measure?
It's not a mitigation measure, but it was,
condition of approval.
maybe it's a new condition of approval, 47.
On number, the condition of approval on number 46?
Well, 46 was the biology one.
Right, and that one, we were going to change to give the RMA director the ability to make the decision?
I'm not sure. We have to confirm whether it's 46, if feasible and approved by RMA director.
Yep, that's fine with me. We can get that for signature. So to include the word if feasible, and that the discretion remains with the RMA director. So we'll wordsmith the last of it for Commissioner Chair Tognazini's signature, but, so what I'm...
If feasible and, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
If feasible and upon discretion or upon approval of RMA director?
Who relies on staff. So if I understand, you've included those two little modifications in your motion?
That's correct. And then on the only other one then is on number 7, but that will be taken care of at the final map stage, correct?
Or prior to that.
Or prior to that, okay. So we don't
the-
need to add that one then.
Okay, and I'll second the motion with the conditions and staff changes and all that stuff.
Okay, you have a motion and a second, approved. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. Okay. Got some discussion about anything here? Next thing on the agenda? And then, done.
Who's the maker of the motion?
Commissioner discussion, or commissioners discussion?
Yeah,
Is that good timing right now?
yes, right now.
So we had talked in the past about general plans, general plan discussions at each one of the meetings, and agendizing this on the agenda each meeting, so we'd have discussions on implementation, general plan, different elements of the general plan, and such. So I would like to include that, but I'd also like to open up in front of the commission the idea that we have a second meeting per month dedicated only to general plan work, general plan implementation, hit the low-hanging fruit, start fleshing out some of our zoning and doing other things that staff feel that need to be done in order to get this general plan completed. I've been here like almost 2 terms now. We got it approved in my first 3 months, and we're still here with very little fleshed out. So if it's basically getting a consensus from the other commissioners that are seated tonight and see how you feel about that.
Well, I think it's a good thing to keep in mind, but I don't know that it's necessary to schedule through the whole year for the second meeting. Maybe we just kind of go by what's necessary and need some time to talk about. You know.
Okay.
Maybe we could do that next month and start the ball rolling and then see where we go.
Or like have a meeting before the meeting, or
Well, maybe.
meeting after the meeting, or something like that. Okay.
Maybe we could do it in the same evening, depending on the size of the agenda.
Yeah. See, the idea was to have it in its own, so only general plan is talked about,
Yeah.
and you don't get a lot of other involved in it, and then we get some real work done on just the general plan. But if we could have like a section of the agenda sectioned off for only as like a workshop for that only, so we actually get some real work done on it. But then we have to look at staff burden too, and whether or not we have I think we're beginning to get a larger staff now. We have a better chance of doing this now.
Yes.
The question is, how do we go about doing it?
Your question was, how do you retain staff with the double workload?
That's the question.
No, may I participate in the conversation
bet,
just a
yeah.
touch through the chair?
Yes.
As you know, it had been our intent to bring a study session this evening with, presented by Mr. Gary Coates, who's been speaking with many of the South County property owners down there on, not South County, but excuse me, South Side Road. It's very much north. It's a long, deep county, so it's not South County, but that South Side Road. And he has spoken, the idea is kind of a non-specific plan by name, but yet a collective of people and property owners that are talking about common infrastructure, water service, sewer service, where to put the park, on whose property, how do they share the burden, maybe there's a better location for a school somewhere. So there are great discussions, and I had meant to bring a study session to you this evening. We've been planning on it for a month and a half, but if it wasn't for an illness, that would have happened this evening. But should it be the Commission's wish to have additional meetings like that, I might suggest maybe in a letter or a memo, and I'm not trying to defer this, but submitted through Ray and, our CAO, Ray Espinosa, as well as our RMA director, because we are in budgetary preparation season right now for a new fiscal year that'll start in July, and the time, money, staff allotments, staffing levels are really on the table and being discussed right now. I would be happy to do such things, but I also appreciate sleeping at least 5 or 6 hours a night, and that would be a lot of work to double the Planning Commission. But also, sometimes it presents opportunities. If you don't make it exclusive, it might be that another project's ready to go on that alternative hearing date. Right? A lot of cities and counties have two commission hearings. The trend here, though, is we have a lot of small projects, barns and things like that, and a lot of very large projects. And those large projects are in the trenches with the gears turning and a lot to consider. Many of the other communities don't have such large projects, or the small projects are handled by staff, and you get a lot of the use permits, those urban uses. Is the car wash appropriate next to the church, next to the houses? And since we're a rural county, we don't have those adjacencies and those proximity type of use permit reviews all the time. So should the Commission wish to formalize that, where you'd like to do more with the staff involvement, please get it into the mix. I mean, at least it's not July 1st right now, and we've got to wait a whole budget cycle, right? You're in February getting ready for a July new fiscal. So I think it's, should you wish. That's my suggestion.
I would like to maybe see if we can put that on the agenda for a formal discussion at the next meeting, and maybe we'll ask the chair to send a letter to the director or to the CAO requesting that the Planning Commission start having 2 meetings a month, or every other month have an extra meeting. This general plan was approved how many years ago, and we're still kicking this stuff around. And I feel the same frustrations I think that Commissioner Pierce does, and we just want to move forward. And the biggest part of it, obviously, is we haven't had staff, but hopefully that's been corrected now, or to some extent. And I really think we should talk about it, give the Planning Commission time to think about it for this rest of this month, and then at the next meeting we can kick it around and decide what's best.
And I also think what might be helpful if I prepare for a little more in-depth departmental report, because even just today I was party to a meeting where we're really moving forward and coming almost under contract for implementation ordinances on the commercial nodes on 101, that planning process began, and actually funded by property owners and not necessarily on the full weight of the county dime. And so that is an aspect of the general plan implementation that's gaining momentum, and there's some very interested parties in getting it done, and actually to pay for an independent analyst to help move that forward. Not just the applicant's interest, but somebody that represents the county's interest for these areas. So there is work being done, and I also have RMA Director Gerton and I are also working out some RFPs here so that if there are consultant services for implementation, that we can get them done. But it doesn't serve a community to have your zoning code or your general plan in dissonance and not working. It is something that it is business that needs to be taken care of.
Yeah, be nice. Through the chair again, you were talking about the commercial hubs out there. And the general plan overlays that as basically a commercial area. So anything that would be a designation like that, wouldn't that be that much closer to the process of allowing that use? Or do you have to go into those specific areas and actually lay down a new zone for there? I thought the general plan pretty much did that.
Correct. Well, remember, there generally are those two layers. I mean, any project generally has to be consistent with the general plan, which is the guiding policy document, and the apple pie and the vision of, solid commercial zones, of fully employed workforce and safe residential homes, and the colors on the map. And there's the implementation, the nuts and bolts of how to get it done, and that's done with zoning code changes, zoning map color changes, specific plans, the implementation ordinances. In this case, you've already done the heavy lifting on the colors of the general plan guidance. It said, on these nodes, we want, a vibrant commercial node. We think there's opportunity here. And so now, the delay you've seen for several years is how do we implement that? All right. So someone right now, if they wanted, say, way out on Santana Road east of Fairview, say, I'd like a commercial center out there, they'd have, a lot of heavy lifting. Well, I'm going to have to change the ask for a change in the general plan, do the whole big EIR, and the zone change with that, and all that. Your general plan work and the EIR work has been done on that area. I mean, the specifics of how the water is going to drain or other water, some of those have to be worked out, but the macro work has already been done on those commercial nodes where, should we draw a commercial node right here, we know we're going to have increased traffic. But on the other hand, also it's increased capture of the commercial dollars that are driving by every day down the road. How do we get that? Oh, let's put a commercial node.
Okay,
So the implementation ordinances, go ahead.
Okay, so since we don't have to do that general plan change and amendment, so how close does that take us to, how long before we could actually use it? I mean, the implementation part of it. So now the heavy lifting is done. We don't have to do the 2 years to go into a general plan amendment change to change it. How long actually from now, since we already have that, to actually having some buckets moving dirt? Are we talking
How often
months?
buckets moving dirt?
Are we talking days? Are we talking years? What are we talking?
Yeah, I think you may be surprised on that one. There appears to be a lot of momentum, so it may be, I'd say in the 6 to 9 to 12 months. So that would mean before that proposals for the specific land uses, maybe even some design, as well as how much of the general plan EIR they can use and hang their hat on, and balance with, how much little additional fringe study needs to be done that might not have been analyzed. But that one's got some momentum. I can look you straight in the eye and say that one's got some momentum. But I think you were speaking also more broadly.
I am, yeah, because, this is just one element. We're lucky we have somebody that's sort of interested there, but there's other elements elsewhere. And unless we get closer to it or we're able to educate the public better, or The developers better, it's not going to encourage economic growth. And that's one of the main parts of the general plan.
So I understood there was a suggestion here to agendize a discussion of general plan implementation. We can do it as a sidebar, or if you like now, are there, 4 or 5 nuts and bolts that you really want me to bring to the table, or that we involve certain players in the administration that you'd like to hear from? Or would you like council and I to just work on that and figure it out?
I'm thinking more of a general discussion to start with, and then we'll move forward from there.
Yeah, how we can implementing.
Okay.
And if that means additional staff dedicated just to this, and that's what it's going to take, so you get to sleep 6 hours a night?
I like 8, but
Or
that's
more,
okay.
yeah.
Mr. Gary Coates had suggested that he make the next meeting, that since he missed tonight, February 21, that he present his group activity on March 21st. Would that be fine with you to pick that up
His
that
group
date?
is a number of folks in Southside.
Off of Southside Road?
Yeah.
The Southside
Okay.
Road group?
Well, that's fine.
Would that also,
That works.
and have your general plan discussion that night?
Sure.
Before
We'll
or after?
start it, yeah.
Probably after, right?
His specific group is bigger than that, though. Doesn't it go from Union Southside all the way back behind Ridgemark? Doesn't it take in like a very broad area?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It's quite a bit of real estate.
Well, how many different parcels? 4 or 5 at least, right?
Like 12?
Well,
Maybe 12, I'm not quite sure
I
the
don't know why
acreage,
I
but it's,
remember that
I think
number,
it's in
but it was-
several hundred acres.
There's quite a bit, yeah.
All right, so agendize a discussion on general plan implementation, but before that, maybe in the evening, also have the presentation from the Southside Road Group.
yeah,
And I think that might help you,
that'd be good.
we'll laser, where there is momentum, where there isn't momentum, and where there's some gaps.
And the year before I got here, so this is what, my second term. The year before I got here, they were still doing two a month planning commissions.
So they were.
Yeah, but then budget constraints and staff and other issues tapered everything down,
Yeah.
and we just didn't. We were still in a mess, and everything was still taking a dive. So there wasn't a reason for the additional meeting. So it hasn't been that long ago since there were 2 meetings. Just a matter of workload.
Yeah, and was it really 10 years ago, in '08, when the crash happened, when, development stopped?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It stopped.
Mm-hmm.
I can't believe it was 10 years ago, because I think the wounds are still fresh in so many.
Definitely.
Okay, all right. You can, yeah.
I'll move to adjourn this meeting to March 21st.
Next regular meeting at 6. I second that.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Were you inviting people to the
People were.